Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Our Vice Dean for Research, Community Service, Cooperation, and Alumni in FEBUGM, Mr. Gumila Aryosadewo, the Chair of Gadjah Mada International Conference on Islamic Accounting, Business, and Economics, Mr. Ahmed Zaki, the Head of Research Center of Sharia Economics and Business, Mr. Novat Pugo Sambodo, the distinguished speakers, Professor Habib Ahmed and Mr. Imam Teguh Saptono, respected guests from Lajismu and Badan Waqf Indonesia, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests and fellow knowledge seekers. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. All praises are to Allah Subhanahu wa taala, the merciful, the all beneficent, by whose grace and blessings have enabled us to gather here for the plenary sessions of Gadjah Mada International Conference on Islamic Accounting, Business, and Economics in Universitas Gadjah Mada. This event is the 8th annual conference held by FEBUGM, especially the Center of Islamic Economics and Business, Universitas Gadjah Mada. This event is also collaborated with the Graduate School of Universitas Gadjah Mada, specifically Doctoral Program of Islamic Economy and Halal Industry Program, as well as Master of Accounting Program of Universitas Gadjah Mada. We also have benevolent support from various sponsors. As we know that climate change is a real issue currently. It affects our environment, social, and economic aspect of the communities. When we see floods, drought, and heat waves would become increasingly common and it become more extreme, leading to a major health crisis and illness. When we talk about agricultural production, it will also plummet, likely to leading to global food shortage and famine. One thing we can do is by promoting Islamic finance and Waqf as the financial tools that can be harnessed to promote sustainability, emphasizing economic and social well-being, resource stewardship, and intergenerational equity in line with Islamic principles. Therefore, today we are very grateful that in today's conference, we're presenting distinguished speakers who are renowned experts in their fields. They bring wealth of knowledge, experience, and insight that will be undoubtedly given us a fresh perspective on the subject matter. Allow me to summarize the speaker's CV. Let's move to the first speaker. The first speaker is my supervisor, my guru, my inspirations, Professor Habib Ahmed from Durham University. He is a Sharjah chair in Islamic law and finance at Durham University Business School, and a fellow honorary at the Cambridge Judge Business School and the member. Before joining Durham in 2008, Professor Habib worked at Islamic Development Bank Group, or IRTI. He has authored or edited more than 100 scholarly publications, which include articles in international referred journals, books, chapters, and other academic papers and reports. Professor Habib Ahmed was awarded by Islamic Development Bank Prize for impactful achievement in Islamic economics with first prize in 2022 for his contributions to applied research in Islamic economics and finance. I would like to invite the first speaker to the stage. Please welcome Professor Habib Ahmed. Thank you very much. That's it. Next, we move to our second speaker. Our second speaker is the expert of Waqf in Indonesia. And my last meeting with him was to discuss Waqf as well in this building. So I think we becoming familiar with this building and this topic. Thus, I would like to summarize Mr. Imam Teguh Saptono CV. Mr. Imam Teguh Saptono took his undergraduate, master, and doctoral programs at Bogor Agricultural University with a specialty in the field of agribusiness and economic policy. His working experience are Deputy Chairman of Indonesia Waqf Board, and also a member of the Expert Council of the Islamic Economic Society, or MES, Masyarakat Ekonomi Syariah, and then Advisory Council of the Indonesian Association of Islamic Economic Experts, or IAEI. Without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Imam Teguh Saptono. Thank you. We have our two speakers in today's session. Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed, please take a moment to ensure your mobile phones are silenced. And let's prepare ourselves for an engaging and thought-provoking discussions. Without any further ado, I would like to invite Prof. Habib to present and guide us to present the idea of Islamic finance.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and very good morning to all. Before I start, just want to thank the organizers to invite me here. First time in Yogyakarta to engage with you and share some of my thoughts. Again, thank you very much for the invitation. Today, I'll talk about Islamic finance and sustainability. Look at the synergies and the type of innovations through which Islamic finance can contribute to sustainability. I'll start with some basic ideas on sustainability and how finance is important in terms of attaining the sustainability, which are in some ways encapsulated in the Sustainable Development Goals. And in the second part, I'll look at Islamic finance, some concepts which in some ways link Islamic finance to sustainability, and try to understand what are the synergies and also the gaps. And in the final part, talk about some innovations which can fill these gaps. I was told I have 40 minutes for the talk. Okay. So starting with the basics in terms of the context of sustainability, I think all of us are aware that the context comes from the Sustainable Development Goals, which was launched in 2015. Also in 2015, the COP21 Paris Agreement was signed by the members of the United Nations, in which the countries basically agreed to take steps to minimize the harmful impact of the economy on the environment. Now, SDGs themselves are very ambitious. They're multidimensional, and they require a lot of not only resources, but new ways of thinking of how the economy operates. One of the key differences in the SDGs compared to its prior MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, is the Millennium Development Goals just focused on the economic development. But when we talk about SDGs, it also includes the social development and also development related to the environment and sustainability. So if you look at the 17 SDGs, we can see that there are SDGs related to economic development, social development, or also environmental development. So again, the key difference is that there's a people perspective and also a planet perspective, which is added to the development context. Most of the countries who have members of the UN, they have adopted SDGs as a framework to develop their own national development plans and strategies. Indonesia is no exception. Indonesia's Vision 2045, as you see, has 4 pillars, which includes human development, sustainable economic development, which reflects the SDGs, equitable development, and national resilience and governance. Along with that, which is relevant to Islamic economics and finance, is the master plan of Sharjah economy, which was launched in 2019, which focuses on the halal economy, on halal value chain, and also strengthening the Islamic financial sector. Now, if you look at the performance of Indonesia in terms of the SDG performance, this is taken from the latest report on sustainable development. We see that the performance has not been very good. If you look at the colors in the bottom, red means that there's major challenges which remain to achieve the SDGs by the 2030 target. And the orange is significant challenges and the yellow is challenges remain. So I think if we look at the overall country ranking, Indonesia performed 75 among 166 countries which were included in this report. And the good thing is at least the country average of 70.2 is above the regional average of 67.2, which is scored at the regional level. Now, the other, as I mentioned, SDGs are very ambitious. They would require a lot of resources. And when SDGs were launched in 2015, there was a study which was done and in 2015, and it basically estimated that the developing countries will face a deficit of 2.5 trillion US dollars annually to achieve the SDGs. So the SDGs were very ambitious to start with, and COVID made it worse. After COVID, the estimates of this gap has increased to 4 trillion US dollars annually. Now, this gap has to be filled from different sources. The government budgets have limitations, so the private sector has to contribute. Private sector and the non-profit sector also has to contribute to achieving these very important goals of sustainable development. The financial sector can contribute to different SDGs. The broad categories of intervention which the financial sector can do is basically increase financial access and inclusion. As you see, it can affect individual households and also the SMEs. There are different SDGs which are affected by enhancing financial inclusion. And of course, the other key investment which is required is to generate resources for investment in the infrastructure. Mainly the renewable energy and also other infrastructure projects. The key difference here would be that there has to be a qualitative change in the financing. It's not only the quantity of money which goes in, but also the quality in terms of how this money is impacting the environment and lives of people. So there has to be a qualitative change in terms of seeing the impact of this so that these investments do not harm the environment, for example, or the planet, and also enhances the overall human welfare, which are part of the sustainable development goal. In a study we did with the World Bank just before the SDGs were launched, we identified the role of Islamic finance, and we found that there are 4 broad categories where Islamic finance can contribute to the SDGs. First is financial stability. Financial sector itself can actually create problems, and the 2008 financial crisis was one of the examples where the financial crisis was the reason for a very long recession, global recession. As I mentioned, infrastructure development is the second major sector where Islamic finance can contribute, financial inclusion and social impact, and finally, sustainable finance, which basically talks about the quality of finance in terms of green finance and financing new sectors of the economy, which creates impact on human lives. The UN objectives identified in achieving the SDGs identified that we need financial innovations for this new vision of finance. And of course, new technologies will play a very important role in this new finance which can contribute to sustainability. Now, there was a report actually done on Indonesia, and this report basically identifies the gap which Indonesia will face, and it estimated that Indonesia will face a US dollar 4.7 trillion US dollars gap to finance the SDGs. So this is a huge amount, and the question is, what has Islamic finance to offer to contribute to the SDGs and filling this gap? So this brings me to the second part of the presentation. Let's look at Islamic finance values and principles and see how it in some ways complies with or has synergies with the sustainability perspective. Again, these are very basic things, but I just will go over this very quickly. In yesterday's lecture also, I covered some of these things. Now, one of the key features of Islamic economic and financial system is it is based on Sharia, and I've also added fiqh. There are some scholars who distinguish between Sharia and fiqh, Sharia being the Quran and Sunnah, the Sharia texts, the revealed knowledge which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent through his book and his messenger. And fiqh is the understanding of this Sharia text by scholars. Now, Islamic finance actually is in some ways governed by the fiqh, the interpretations of scholars on contemporary economic issues based on the Sharia principles from the two sources. Now, the overall purpose of Sharia, again, some scholars, they say if you want to summarize what Islamic law and Sharia is, it can be summarized in one sentence, that it is about enhancing the well-being of humans, the maslah, and minimizing the harm. So whenever we talk about Sharia, we have to understand that it is there to benefit, to enhance the benefits and reduce the harms. Now, Sharia entails legal principles and also ethical values. Sometimes we focus too much on legal principles, but I think ethical values are also very important and integral part of the Sharia teachings. And these basically ethical values comes from the Sharia text itself, from Quran and Sunnah, and also summarized by scholars in what we call Maqasid al-Sharia. So maslaha, the essential maslaha is basically represented in Maqasid al-Sharia. And also there are some legal maxims which have been developed by scholars which reflect the legal and also the ethical values and principles which are derived from the Sharia texts. When it comes to economic transactions, the principle of permissibility applies, which basically says that everything is permissible except what is prohibited. The prohibitions are actually very limited. So there are some prohibitions related to some products. We cannot have pork and wine and some activities like gambling, for example. So these are the prohibited activities and products. And then there are some prohibitions in the transactions themselves. When we transact, two key prohibitions are riba and gharar. Riba, as you know, is usually translated as interest, but it has much wider implications. The key element of riba is that the transaction should entail justice. I think that's the key message. And gharar is ambiguity in contracts. Excessive ambiguity in contracts is prohibited. So when we are transacting among ourselves, the prohibitions which we have to look for are riba and gharar. Any transaction which does not have riba and gharar basically would be permissible given the principle of permissibility. Now, as I mentioned, legal maxims is one of legal maxims is one of the sources of values and principles which drive a lot of new rulings. And sometimes actually we forget this, but I think these rulings are basically in some ways the guidelines which we have to follow when we're thinking of policies and of also thinking of new rulings, the new resolutions related to a lot of contemporary issues. I've identified here some of the maxims which are relevant to sustainability. As you see, actually, there are quite a few rulings related to minimizing harm. This relates to the basic principle of enhancing maslaha and mitigating harm. So a few examples of maxims, Qawaid al-Fiqh, harm is removed as far as possible. Repelling a harm is preferable to securing a benefit. So if you have a case where there is some harm and also some benefit, and if they're equal, we'll choose not to do that. Because removing a harm is given more preference than achieving a benefit. So in economics, we can look at this in terms of cost-benefit analysis. The benefit must exceed the cost whenever we're making the decisions. And another interesting maxim is, I think, related to public policy, is a private harm is tolerated in order to ward off a public harm. So if an activity is creating public harm, we can rule that that can be avoided or even prohibited at the cost of the benefit which an individual gets from that activity. So I think these are some of the important maxims which govern sustainability perspectives. And of course, there are other maxims which relate to transactions. And these are the maxims which link returns to risk. And two of these are al-kharaj with daman, which basically means benefit goes with liability, and also al-ghunm bi al-ghunm, which is liability accompanies gain. So the key point here is that we cannot expect a return without taking the risk. The return must be a result of taking the risk, which means that you can earn a profit, and also there are chances that you can lose because of the risks which arise in the transaction. Now let's try to focus on the human and the planetary well-being. And this, I think, Maqasid Sharia is basically about human well-being. As you are aware, Maqasid Sharia is defined as protection or enhancement of actually six elements I've put here. Faith, self, and this is the human self, the intellect, the posterity, the future generation, wealth of people, and the society, and also dignity. The key thing here is all of these elements relate to individuals, and in an Islamic society, we must ensure that these are not only protected but enhanced. What this translates into is an inclusive economy. This Maqasid Sharia is applicable for all individuals in the society, so the economy has to be inclusive. There are some maqasid also specific to economic transactions. Among others, Ibn Ashur has identified 5 maqasid related to economic transactions. And he identifies marketability, transparency, preservation, durability, and justice as the 5 maqasid which are related to transactions. I think what is important for us is the justice part. Of course, the others are also important. But any economic transaction that creates injustice or is not just would not be compatible with the values of Islam as reflected in the Maqasid al-Sharia. So basically, the Maqasid approach ensures humane and just economic system. The Maqasid also has implications for the planetary well-being. The basic assumption actually, and this is a very important thing, that when we think of resources, in Islam, the perspective is this is owned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and given to us as trust. And all creations, including the environment, they prostrate and to the Creator and glorify Him. So when we're using the resources, we have to understand this perspective, that we are not the absolute owners. We are given this as a trust, and we can only use it according to the guidelines which are provided by the Sharia. Actually, Yusuf al-Qaradawi has a very interesting book on environment from Islamic perspective. And in one of the chapters, he looks at the protection of environment from a Maqasid perspective. And what he's arguing there is that protection of environment affects all the 5 Maqasid which we discussed: protection of life, self, and wealth, progeny. So what he's saying is, to achieve the Maqasid, we have to actually protect the environment. And then the other perspective is, again, I mentioned yesterday, one of the key differences between an Islamic economic system and a conventional system is how do we define an economic man? In the conventional economics, an economic man, the Homo Islamicus, is a rational person who maximizes his or her utility, a firm maximizes the profit. But the idea of a man, economic man in Islam is Homo Islamicus, who is guided by these Islamic values and principles. And one of the perspective is that humans ascend as Khalifa, and Khalifa basically is a vicegerent or a trustee and must act as a steward and preserve this natural order and balance between creators. Actually, this is also mentioned by Yusuf al-Qaradawi that we should act as Khalifa when we are dealing with the environment. So given this perspective, we can think of Islamic development goals as enhancing, protecting Maqasid al-Sharia, which basically translates to enhancing the welfare and well-being of people and the planet. And as we also saw, contemporary national goals in most countries are aligned with SDGs. Now, there are some papers which actually look at Maqasid and also the SDGs, and a lot of them try to find similarities. And this table actually I have derived from a paper which is, or a standard which is being developed by IOFI. They're looking at sustainability, and actually they have come up with a matrix where they're saying that from a Sharia point of view, the sustainable development goals, they in some ways overlap or have similar objectives as the SDGs. So I think as given the principle of permissibility, we can agree that SDGs from a Sharia point of view is acceptable. So when we're talking about sustainability, when countries are preparing their sustainable development goals, it is aligned with the Sharia values of Maqasid al-Sharia. So the implications for Islamic finance, again, at the theoretical level, at the conceptual level, we can summarize in this table that the Islamic value of humans as vicegerents or Khalifa translates to that we should preserve and avoid misuse of resources and environment. And also, as investors, we should promote and invest inclusive and sustainable finance. And I think that's important, because ultimately what the financial sector does, it depends on what investors want. And as Khalifas or the vicegerents, we actually, when we're making decisions, we have to consider the impact on environment and in some ways have this ethics of sustainability. Maqasid al-Sharia, again, we just discussed that it translates to financial inclusion, which affects people, the human element, and sustainable development, which affects the planet. So any financing must consider preservation of environment, which basically translates to you have to do another layer of screening other than just Sharia screening, ESG type of screening, to ensure that the impact of the financing does not adversely impact environment, social and governance issues. Minimizing the harm, again, carry out ESG screening along with legal screening. And the justice concept translates to avoiding riba in transactions and gharar, and also provide social finance, which includes zakah and waqf as institutions which can enhance not only human welfare, but also can protect the environment. Okay, so let's look at the practice. This was the theory, right? Now, application of Islamic finance is basically should be applying Islamic values and principles in finance. Now, the question is how do we define Sharia compliance? The practice has been that Sharia compliance has been defined as legal compliance. It is a prohibition-driven economy. So as long as the prohibitions are not there, it is Sharia compliant. As we saw, this is a narrow definition of Sharia compliance because it does not include ethics. The focus is on compliance in form rather than in substance. And in some jurisdictions, we have come up with products which in some ways replicate the conventional. And a good example is Tawarruk, which basically is a replication of an interest-based loan. But because you're buying and selling commodities to create that structure, it is compliant in form, but in substance, it is very similar to interest-based loan. So the Maqasid al-Sharia, which we just discussed, is ignored in the practice of Islamic finance. So the ethics is not applied. The legal principles are applied in a very formalistic way. Now here is a summary of the evidence we have. A summary of some 5 papers which I collected. For us, the key thing here would be the last column there, social and environmental impact. All of these studies, as you see, study different Islamic banks, and they look at their performance in different activities. Most of them are good in Sharia compliant, of course, the Islamic banks. And Sharia compliance, of course, is defined here as legal compliance. But for us, the interesting part is the last column here. We see that most of the study find that the Islamic banks, they have insignificant impact on social and environmental issues. So the conclusion is that Islamic banks, from this 5 studies, we can conclude that they are actually not playing a very important role when it comes to social and environmental impact. Now, this is also reflected in this latest study by Sibafi. They basically surveyed 103 Islamic banks globally, and they had different questions. So 5 is the maximum. That means the 5 is gives the highest priority, and 0 is that they don't give the priority. So as you see, the top concerns of Islamic banks in this survey, which is done in 2023, is that information technology is the top concern, consumer attraction retention is the second concern, macroeconomic environment, and these are valid concerns. But as we see, financial inclusion, micro and SME financing, its ranking is 19th. There were a lot of other things, their concerns. So the implication is Islamic banks are not really concerned about or giving less preference to financial inclusion and SME financing. Similarly, the report also identifies the key risks which Islamic banks face. Again, according to the survey, cybersecurity risk is the highest risk they identify, followed by credit risk. Credit risk is understandable because that's what they do. They give out financing which creates credit risk, then technology risk, liquidity risk. But again, the climate change risk, as you see, actually I think the number there, the ranking is 20. So the Islamic banks are not too much worried about climate risk, even though it is a real reality. But if you look at the business models of Islamic banks, they are not too much concerned about the credit risk. So we find that there is synergies in values, but gaps in practice. So this is the conclusion we get. And now the question is, how do we fill this gap? And through innovation. Now, before I talk about innovation, I just want to share with you this slide and UN report in 2017. They're saying that SDGs actually is a huge business opportunity. Actually, you can make money out of this SDG implementation. And, but of course, for that, you need a different mindset. When we're talking about new opportunities, we're talking about new areas, new sectors. You have to take risks, you have to innovate. So this UN report looked at 4 sectors only: agricultural, cities, energy and materials, and health and well-being. And they said in these 4 sectors, if countries, they try to achieve the SDGs, they can create $12 trillion of value. That means there's a business worth additional $12 trillion globally. And actually, this can also create $380 million, jobs by 2030. So what the point I'm trying to say is the banks and businesses, they don't have to do charity to achieve sustainability. It is a business opportunity which can be achieved, but to achieve this business opportunity, there is a need for innovation. Now, in terms of innovation, very quickly, innovation is not only about new ideas, but how to implement these new ideas and come up with solutions. So, and there are a lot of ideas floating around, but these has to be experimented with. Not all of them will be successful. The key thing is that we have to have a different mindset in terms of how to innovate, and that will be, I think, a key challenge in terms of how we move forward. So innovation is about practical ideas of how to exploit the opportunities, create value, and satisfy the needs and provide solutions. How much time I have? Okay. Now, when we look at innovations, we can look at it in different perspectives. I've identified here three. Actually, when we think of innovation, innovation can be in products, innovation can be in organizational structures and business models. But one of the key things which we miss is that there can be innovation in meaning also. And actually, there's a new literature which is coming up in terms of innovation and meaning. And I think for Islamic finance, this innovation in meaning is very, very important. Depending on, for example, how you define Sharia compliance, you will have different types of innovation, and we'll talk about that. And the other thing I will look at is that innovation levels can be marginal or radical. Marginal is minor innovations or almost sometimes no innovation. And radical is when you have basically come up with very drastic innovation, which can create different types of impact. So let's try to understand the meaning, the innovation and meaning, because we understand the innovation in products and innovation in organizational structures. But as I said, this innovation of meaning is being discussed in literature, and I think it's very relevant to Islamic economics and finance. Now, meaning relates to purpose of the product perceived by the user. When we talk about meaning, we ask the question why the user is using that product, right? And I think it's very relevant for Islamic economics and finance, because when we're talking about halal economy, for example, we're talking about a meaning which people give to the product. It is by not eating pork, we are making a choice because there's a religious meaning to it. There's a prohibition from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are implementing that. So there's a meaning to that action. I think that's the key issue in terms of meaning. And actually, it's not only about Islamic economics, finance. Even in the conventional economics, when people buy things, they buy things because they find different meanings in it. And of course, those meanings are guided by different values and principles. That's a different question. But I think it's very important to know that when we are making choices, there are some underlying values and principles which give meaning to those choices. So meaning relates to values of products. So values are not in terms of usefulness, but also reflecting the subjective cultural tenets, right? Again, we can think of Islamic finance. If Muslims decide not to deal with riba, this is a decision which comes from a religious teaching. And similarly, for example, if women are wearing hijab, it is a religious, in some ways, implementation of their value system. And I think this is a very important aspect. Now, like any innovation, the innovation and meaning can be marginal or it can be radical. So what I'm trying to say in this presentation is what Islamic finance is doing is they have taken the meaning of Sharia compliance in a very narrow perspective. And as such, what is happening is the changes, the innovation and meaning is very minor. So when we're talking about minor or marginal innovation, what we're saying is there is very little change in the meaning of the products which appear in the market. And radical innovation is basically redefinition of this socio-cultural paradigm, resulting in products that are new and different from dominant meaning in existing markets. Again, a good example will be interest-based loan is a product which exists in the market. Now, if you're doing tawarruk, you're basically saying it's Sharia compliant, but in terms of meaning, it's very similar to a conventional interest-based loan. So the innovation in a tawarruk is marginal or almost zero, because OIC Fiqh Academy has ruled that a tawarruk is basically an interest-based structure. So if you want to have changes of meaning, we have to come up with products which not only complies with the legal compliance, but also should have the ethical values which we discussed in terms of the Maqasid al-Sharia. So here we have the Islamic finance innovation meaning. As I just mentioned, Sharia compliance fulfills a religious obligation, and religious obligation and teachings has both legal and ethical considerations. Products can be different meaning depending on how Sharia compliant is defined. So the meaning of Sharia compliant will basically lead to the products in the market. If Sharia compliant is defined in a narrow sense, we'll have a certain type of products. But if you include the ethics and maqasid, the product types will be different. Now, to give you an example in terms of halal economy, for example, if you look at halal meat, halal meat is you do zabiha and it is halal and you stop there, right? But if you want to look at ethics of it, and this is the difference between halal and tayyib, you have to look at the supply chain. The supply chain of that chicken or how the animal was treated, whether it's fed artificial feed and things like that. If that's the case, it may be halal, but it's not tayyib. That means you are not including the other ethical values which should be there to treat the animals in a very ethical way. So I think this is in some ways the key difference, that depending on how we define Sharia compliance, we will come up with products which have different meanings. And the key point I'm trying to make is that when we talk about sustainability, if we define Islamic finance in a legal perspective, I don't think Islamic finance will be able to contribute anything to sustainability. For Islamic finance to contribute to sustainability, we have to expand the meaning of Sharia compliance to include the ethics and the perspective of maqasid. So sustainability implications of meaning on product innovation basically means that we have to move from the current practice of reverse engineering, which basically does you look at a conventional product and you make replicate a Islamic product by just playing around with the contracts. If this is done, this is marginal innovation. As I mentioned, it is reverse engineering. For Islamic finance to contribute to sustainability, we have to expand the idea of Sharia compliance to include maqasid, and we have to have a different innovation type, and this is the innovative engineering which we need. So we have to change the mindset of meaning, which will have implication of how we do innovation, and it will change from reverse engineering, which is replication of conventional products, to innovative engineering, where we actually start with the needs of the people and then come up with the appropriate solutions. And there's also implications of the meaning in terms of the organizational innovation. Now, Islamic banks, as you know, they are structured as, and basically the organizational format is that of a conventional bank. Now, conventional bank, as you know, has evolved over 300-400 years. It is an interest-based, debt-based structure, and then we have adopted this structure, and we're trying to do Islamic banking with that. And again, this is from an organizational innovation perspective. There's no innovation there. There's zero innovation. You're basically using a conventional banking organizational structure and using it for Islamic banks. So given the values and principles of Islamic finance, we actually should create new organizational structures which reflect the values and principles of Sharia. And for example, the conventional banking model is a shareholders maximizing model. The Islamic model should be stakeholders model. It should come in forms of cooperatives. I mentioned yesterday that one of the interesting financial institutions in Indonesia, Baitul Mal wa Tamwil, reflects one of these models which reflects the Islamic values and principles. You have the Tamwil part, which is financing, and Baitul Mal part, which is the charitable part of that organization. So I think innovation has to come in organizations in terms of non-bank financial institutions. Banks are not the right organizational structures for Islamic finance if we are thinking of sustainability. There are some unique Islamic financial institutions which do not exist in the conventional Mudaraba companies in Pakistan, Tabung Haji in Malaysia, and now also in Indonesia, for example. Another thing is that I think from an Islamic point of view, we can think of social enterprises, which makes money, but also at the same time creates impact in the society. And there is, again, a lot of discussion on social enterprises where you're making money by creating impact. So my final slide is that Islamic finance not only should have products which are green, You should do ESG screening to fulfill the maqasid along with Sharia screening. The other thing is that where Islamic banks can contribute to SDGs and sustainability is to invest in innovative projects. And as we saw, SDGs, they offer a great economic opportunity. And I think if we have Islamic finance, which is complying with legal and also ethical values, that's where Islamic finance should go into. Invest in innovation which creates impact and can achieve economic sustainability. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Habib Ahmed, who just delivered the insightful presentations about how the Islamic finance can contribute to sustainability or sustainable development goals. As we have heard that there are many things that Islamic finance can do, but the foundation is about how we can create the innovations. And then this innovation is not only the marginal one, but we need to think, yeah, of course the marginal is commendable, but we need also to think about the radical change in Islamic finance. When we talk about the values in Islamic finance, eventually it's aligned with the SDGs as well. When we see humans, they are the trustees from trustees of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, and we should preserve environment because what we have heard that environment it affects the maqasid of Sharia. So that's why we need to preserve the environment, and then we also need to consider the social aspects in every economical activities. However, when we see the top concerns of Islamic banks, the top concern is about information technologies, how they attract their customers. When we see the financial inclusions, and also when we talk about risk, about the climate change, they not prioritize it. They put the concerns in 19th and 20th ranks, yeah, respectively. So currently, what we can do is we move from current practice, which is reverse engineering and mimicking the conventional practice, to more radical change in organizational model. So that's why in developing the Islamic finance, we should invest more in the innovations, and hopefully that we will bring more contributions to the development, especially the sustainability as well. And when we talk about the organizational model, Prof, I think Mr. Imam Teguh will talk about Waqf, and there are other, I think BMT and Waqf can bring similar activities such as the profitable and then the charitable one. So I think we cannot wait for Mr. Imam Teguh Saptono to deliver his presentations. Without any further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Imam Teguh Saptono to deliver his presentations.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salatu wassalamu ala asrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi washabihi ajmain. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I think it is an honor for me to be invited at this. I think this is not important. This is an honor for me to be invited at this prestigious event. And I was very happy and enjoying get and seeing presentation from Prof. Habib, and it is very insightful and fruitful. As I predicted, or as far as I know, that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has already give a bold strategy to fight or to attack the riba is by increasing the sadaqah. So currently I'm glad to be able to share my opinions and experience with all participants today about the topics that will be discussed today. It is related with the SDG assessment and especially in Waqf. Now allow me to start with the first agenda about current economic development issues and the role of Waqf. Ladies and gentlemen, currently the world is facing a very dynamic situation. After the COVID pandemic, the civilization of the world entry into a new phase of civilization, starting from the development of global digitalization, which has given birth to many disruptive phenomena in many industries. At the same time, climate change is happening, cause a number of natural disasters such as flood, drought, landslide, and threaten global food availability. Consequently, rise and increasing awareness about the green economy, such as electric vehicle, renewable energy, and much more. Apart from that, the constellation of world power is changing, which is causing a number of tension among major world powers, such as Russia, China, America, and their allies. As is happening in Ukraine, in turn this conflict caused damage to the supply chains of a number of the world's main commodities, which threaten to increase inflation rates and change in exchange rates as well. On top of everything, it is happening, the one big issue that we need to address is that the world economic inequality gap is widening. Credit Suisse note that the wealth share of the global top 1% rose to reach 45.6% in 2021, up from 43% in 2019, and it is feared that this number that indicate the inequality gap will worsen in the coming years, especially after the pandemic. Furthermore, Oxfam also wrote in its report that the impact of this disparity caused the death of 1% in world population per 4 seconds, or equal to 21,300 deaths per day caused by lack of access to health facilities, gender-based violence, starvation, and etc. Every time an economic disaster occurs in the world, including Indonesia, the worst economic group impacted is always the bottom of the pyramid, with the largest population, which also happen or belong to Muslim. As illustrated in the following slide, the post-COVID has caused almost 500 million people to fall into poverty. But on the other hand, the richest strata have actually increased their role in economic distribution and increased their wealth as well. In Islam, as a Shumuliyah or comprehensive religion, has actually regulated it in such a way that economic distribution runs fairly and avoid economic exploitation of one group against another group. The above mandate is carried out by a number of social financial instruments, namely zakat, infak, sedekah, and waqf. Fundamentally, zakat is carried out to increase the level of life of the lowest poor or aid asnaf to subsistence level, while the role of infak and sedekah carried out as a buffer, a dampening cushion when we are caught in an economic shock. Meanwhile, waqf is carried out an effort to increase economic capacity. This can be analogous to operational expenditures and capital expenditures on economic entity. Ladies and gentlemen, talking about waqf in the centuries of Islamic glory, Waqf was proven to be a pillar of the economics economy. Waqf play a big role in providing health facilities, as happened in the Abbasiyah era. Waqf also plays a role empowering the business during a crisis, as occurred in the era of Umar Abdul Aziz. Waqf provides educational facilities, supplies logistics and weapons in times of war, and even giant cross-border infrastructure project, as was the case in the Hijaz Railway project. Even cash waqf is known as the forerunner to the birth of the banking sector, as experienced during the glory of Ottoman Turkey. The domain of waqf is ijtihad. Therefore, waqf is expected to be able to answer the current challenge of the people's economic problem. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are entering the second agenda about the development waqf in Indonesia. Currently, various waqf management structures are known in the world. Some are centralized in one extreme, while on the other side of the other spectrum is independent ones, like in the case of in Indonesia. Waqf regulation in Indonesia are light and tend to be liberal, where anyone can be nazir as long as they have mandate from the waqif. Currently, Indonesia has more than 400,000 nazir. Therefore, it needs approach on managing it, different from what other countries with centralized waqf management do. The following slide describes the development of waqf asset mobilization in Indonesia. Land waqf assets reach more than 57,000 hectares, with growth in around 6% per year. Even though it is quite extensive, but unfortunately, they spread over a large amount of land with limited area. The utilization is still oriented towards developing social assets, such as madrasah, prayer rooms, or mosque and cemetery. On the other hand, accumulation of cash waqf is still limited, only recorded at around 1.7 trillion, or around 1% of the total potential. This condition causes a waqf asset, especially land, to tend to be underinvested and underutilized. In line with that, public literacy about waqf is still low. In a survey carried out by the Ministry of Religion in collaboration with the National Zakat Agency or Basnas and the Indonesian Waqf Board in 2020, the Indonesian Waqf Literacy Index was categorized low, and the score was almost half of the zakat literacy score. So, what is the role of waqf in national economic growth? The following is a hypothesis on the role of waqf and zakat on macro basis, wherein the fact zakat infak sedekah waqf will directly assist the government in terms of reducing poverty, accelerating economic growth, improving income distribution, preventing budget deficit, and reducing government spending. Thus, it is necessary to reconsider providing tax incentive for the zakat, infak, sedekah, waqf instrument to obtain an optimal multiplier effect. In the context of micro approach, waqf asset normatively have a number of advantages that must be considered by businessmen, including legal certainty, certainty of the future asset utilization plans, and last but not least, low total investment. With this characteristic, commercial assets that build on waqf land have the advantage of higher IRR, shorter BEP or break-even point, and stronger resilience in the event of economic shock. But in reality, what actually happened is quite the opposite, where businessmen actually avoid investing in waqf asset. Waqf assets are considered inferior because they do not have access to formal financing sources. Although hypothetically, the development of commercial asset on waqf land is more competitive and profitable than ordinary land, in practice, Waqf land is avoided by businessmen. A number of stigma are floating around, such as the limited use only for religious and social purposes, managed traditionally by Nazir who are not business-oriented and have low capability, prohibited to be used as collateral, and at risk to be claimed by Waqf heirs. The point is that the financing of commercial assets on Waqf land is a sector that is included in the blacklist of banking institutions. Therefore, it is necessary to make breakthrough both in terms of products and institutional roles so that they are compatible, even though these issues should not have happened for Islamic banks in the first place. In the condition are like this, then why are Islamic finance instruments, or what I call celestial instruments, have not been able to give much to welfare of the people? The answer is the existence of incompatibility issues between the concepts and model of celestial instrument with the paradigm of stakeholder, infrastructure, organization, market instrument, and existing rules. Waqf and other Islamic instruments have not yet entered the national mainstream economic system and are considered to be merely complementary and unimportant. The impact of this incompatibility has caused the role and concept of Waqf to be dwarfed. This condition has occurred for centuries and is very dependent on the history of each country. The Waqf curriculum has become incomplete and different in each country. Therefore, the impact is not optimal and even tends to be stunted. Even after such a long time, the competence of professionalism of Nazir is not developed yet. Until now, a lot of Nazir of Waqf assets is only social oriented, and it's keep going back to mosque, madrasah, and cemetery. In an effort to integrate this, in October 2018, the Minister of Finance, Bank of Indonesia, Badan Waqf Indonesia, and Minister of Religion jointly launched a product innovation that is Cash Waqf Link Sukuk. It is an investment instrument for cash Waqf based on state sukuk, where Nazir Cash Waqf has a safe alternative instrument as a quasi of sovereign risk, but still has competitive return. For example, in the issuance of the first Cash Waqf Link Sukuk in 2019, Badan Waqf Indonesia, who acted as a Nazir, successfully collected 50 billion rupiah of temporary cash Waqf funds, which were then invested into state sukuk, specifically issued for Waqf. In the following years, Badan Waqf Indonesia was also successful in obtaining Waqf funds in the form of cash Waqf Link Sukuk from a number of universities, which is included their endowment funds in the form of cash Waqf through sukuk. Currently, the government has issued a number of series of cash Waqf Link Sukuk worth almost 1 trillion rupiah, or around 66 to 67 million US dollar. In 2023, last April, the Ministry of Finance received the Global Innovation Award from ISDB for its cash Waqf Link Sukuk initiatives. The following is an illustration of the financial engineering carried out for the Rumah Sakit Ahmad Wardi, or hospital development. From the result of cash Waqf Link Sukuk, around 50.8 billion rupiah was collected with a revenue stream of 230 million rupiah per month, which is not a significant amount to finance the capital expenditures. At that time, through the collaboration with BNI Syariah Bank, the income stream was used as a collateral to obtain financing worth 12.8 billion rupiah, which was used to afford ambulance, medical equipment, room renovation, and social services. The capacity increase caused the number of patients and hospital admission to increase. In the third year since operating, the hospital has managed to record a significant growth in profits. Currently, Rumah Sakit Ahmad Wardi is buying a land for the expansion of its hospital facility from the profit obtained. In addition to this, hospital, together with Bank Indonesia, is mobilizing community Waqf for its development needs. Now we discuss about the policy direction ahead. The future development of Waqf led to the new era of national Waqf. This is marked by the following things. First, the Waqf movement involves certain social group or community, such as government employee, entrepreneur, young student, and etc. The variety of Waqf asset range from capital market products such as sukuk, money market such as deposit link Waqf, to Waqf insurance benefit. A variety of Waqf contract and professional and also transparent investment management. On the Nazir side, Nazir competencies are also standardized through a national certification program. The use of technology to build connectivity between institution, donation platform, and super apps for transaction and reporting purposes. On the Mawqaf Ally side, things are starting to vary with long-term and sustainable programs. Also, on the institutional side, more harmonious institution cooperation has been built, for example, between the Sharia banking system and Nazir. All the points that I elaborated before led to the one goal, that is build an ecosystem. The design of ecosystem strategically that we will build is to connect the key stakeholders who have been disparately, namely government, Islamic financial institution, zakat infak sadaqah wakaf institution, and the community. We must encourage institutional Islamic financial institution to function as locomotive in terms of collecting zakat infak sadaqah wakaf and providing financing for the development of wakaf asset. Therefore, in the future, Islamic bank must be encouraged to be a nazir of cash wakaf. For Amil or Nazir institution, they must be encouraged to start collaborating for synergizing superior project so that they are able to produce a wow effect for the community. The patterns of competition or musabakoh must be transformed into synergy or muawanah. Besides that, certification program, training, and upgrading also need to be accelerated, including governance aspects such as transparency and reporting. The role of community is directed at effort to socialize and increase literacy, both through formal education institution as well as informal education, such as scholars, parents, to foster philanthropic values to become family lifestyle. And next, the government takes the role as a guide system manifested in the provision of the conducive set of regulation, pioneering the Waqf movement in the government employee, pioneering socially oriented national project on Waqf land, and etc. Last but not least is digitalization. In order to build a modern Waqf ecosystem, Badan Waqf Indonesia is currently conducting a digital transformation which is expected to be completed next year, and in the future, all Waqf stakeholders can be connected in one complete, the versatile platform. As a closing, this is my last slide. To end this session, I want to highlight 3 aspects that will encourage the booming of the philanthropy market. Namely, first, mental and spiritual asset of Indonesia. Indonesia has been named as the most generous country in the world. Second, the demographic advantage that Indonesia has in the mid-2030s, Indonesia will be ranked second as the country with the highest labor force in the world after India. This means that Indonesian population will have economic surplus because they work. And third, according to the 2018 Fadzkurrahman survey, Indonesia is the country with the most religious millennial group in the world. If these three combine, I will predict that Indonesia will experience a booming trend of Islamic philanthropy in the next 5 to 10 years. This marks the end of my presentation. I hope my explanation is useful, and I'm happy to be able to answer questions from the participant. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much for Mr. Imam Teguh Saptono, who has delivered the fruitful presentations about enhancing Waqf sustainability. And when we talk about Waqf and how it has roles, and perhaps we can say that Waqf institution, it's very reflecting the Islamic values. When we see that Prof. Habib have mentioned about BMT, these Waqf institutions also can bring the profitable aspects as well as the charitable aspects. So that's why Waqf is a part of this development in the society. However, we still have problem that Waqf in Indonesia is underutilized. So that's why we need to move from basically only for the social development. We need to think also about the business development. When we see that Waqf, it has many functions such as reducing poverty, increasing economic growth. It means that Waqf itself is contemporary to the government interest. And Prof. And Pak Imam Teguh said that it should get incentive from the government. And when we see the practice of Waqf in Indonesia, and we have Kas Waqf linked sukuk, it is awarded by Islamic Development Bank as the Global Innovations Award. So it's a great news for us in Indonesia, because we have developed one instruments which is Kas Waqf linked sukuk. And also when we talk about the resurgence of national Waqf, there is digitalizations, and then there's also the standardization of nadir competence. So it means that Waqf in Indonesia is not only emerging but also growing significantly, because we have many aspects that have been improved. And then when we see how the society, the Islamic bankings, and this Waqf institution, we should collaborate and have synergies among the institutions, and then we can create the maximum value of Islamic finance in Indonesia, and it can create benefits to most of the societies, not only for social but also for business purpose. And I think we have seen and we have heard very fruitful discussions, fruitful presentations from Prof. Habib and Mr. Imam Teguh. I would like to open the discussions forum for the participants who have joined us. I will open perhaps 3 participants would like to ask from this side, 2 and 3. Yeah. Please help from the right side of the stage.
Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Haryani from International Open University and come from Musirawas, South Sumatra. Let me deliver my questions. The first is for Professor Habib Ahmed. I want to ask, is there any differentiation between the foundation of building sustainability in rural and urban area? Or is there any special theory to fastening the development of sustainable economy in rural area? And the second question is for Dr. Imam Teguh. What must the Waqf institution do to build the awareness to the community, especially in rural area, to do their Waqf to the institution, because especially in rural areas, not popular to do their Waqf to the Mauquf alai. For the opportunity, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the questions. Let's move to the second participants right here. Baju.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Firmansyah from Alami Fintech Hijrah Group. So I would like to address my questions to both Prof. Habib and also Dr. Imam. For the first one about the sustainability of the sustainability role for the Islamic banking is actually yet to be capitalized. But as we know that actually the sector of the sustainability, for instance, Prof. Habib, like carbon capture storage, then the micro hydro, even some of the advanced sustainability is quite new and nascent. Then Islamic banking in terms of the credit assessment and also the commercial viability study is also limited. So how we as bankers need to develop our capacity while at the same time we're striving for the targets, like the commercial targets. So I think that's my question for you. And the second question to Dr. Imam is that you mentioned that about the transgression between the Islamic commercial finance and Islamic social finance. So how we connect the dots, and even for the Islamic NBFI, like Islamic fintech, for instance, could also be the driving force for Waqf. How do you see this as a chance and as an opportunity way forward, as the industry is still also new and compared with the bank, we're yet to mature in the near future? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the questions. And the last over here.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Sharjah. I'm from South Sulawesi, exactly Pune Regency. I just wanna ask Professor Habib Ahmed. I wanna ask about TikTok social media, because just now you said and mentioned many times of innovation products. The most trendy news that happens in our country, Indonesia, about TikTok social media. For the first time, TikTok functions as social media, then innovate itself become by doing financial transaction. The relationship between TikTok and SDGs, I think it is very okay. From an economy aspect, it is okay. From the environment, it is okay. From the social, it is okay. But the President of Indonesia himself make some plans that TikTok must function only as social media, not as financial institutions. I want to ask you about this. How do you think about your opinion from the Islam aspect? Should we have Sharia TikTok or another solution? Thank you very much.
Yeah, I
This
understand.
TikTok thing,
Let me answer the question according to how it was asked. First, is there a difference between sustainability in rural and urban areas? Of course there is, because rural areas have different issues than urban areas. And actually I think one way to look at it would be to look at the 17 SDGs themselves. Some of the SDGs relate more to rural areas than, and other SDGs probably are more relevant for urban areas. For example, one of the SDGs, I'm not sure what number it is about sustainable cities, right? So sustainable cities definitely is an urban issue. Zero hunger, when we talk about zero hunger, it is not only about reducing or eliminating hunger, but to eliminate it using sustainable agriculture. So zero hunger, I think, would be directly relevant to rural areas, because we're talking about sustainable agriculture, which can produce enough so that it can feed the world, right? So I think definitely if you look into these, sometimes there is a discussion that SDGs, why do we have to follow them? And we should create our own development goals based on Maqasid. I think it's trying to reinvent the wheel. As long as because the principle of Ibaha, we can adopt SDGs as long as if there are some issues which contradict Islamic values and principles, we don't accept them. But as for the others, zero hunger, sustainable agriculture and those things, I think these do not contradict Islamic values. The good thing about SDGs is it has 17 SDGs, then it has certain, I think 169 specific targets, indicators, targets, and then indicators. And they are very specific. So you can go and measure, look at these targets, and you can identify the specific areas where intervention would be needed. And I think one way to look at the urban versus rural would be to identify these indicators. Some of them are very relevant for rural areas, and the others are for cities and urban areas. Your question about how to balance sustainability and the economic goals. Actually, as I mentioned in one of my slides, this is a business opportunity. You can make a lot of money by doing stuff which are green, because this is where, of course, that would require a lot of innovation, because ultimately, if you want to think in terms of business model, it has to make sense economically, right? But technology, the innovation, and given that we live in the fourth industrial revolution era with digital technology, I think there are opportunities to create money by coming up with sustainable solutions. I'll just give you two examples. One, of course, Tesla is coming up with electric vehicles which are, from an environment point of view, much greener than cars which use gas, petrol. And Tesla is a very good business. Actually, Tesla's market capitalization is much bigger than the existing car manufacturers, the huge Toyotas and others, because people see that it will be able to create value. And this is just an example. And the other example I want to give you, which I also mentioned yesterday, was a lot of investors now, they are in some ways imposing ESG criteria on their investments because they see that environmental risk is a very important risk. So if you do not incorporate into your environmental protection into your business models, you basically risk to be either obsolete or not be able to compete, or maybe the rules will change because they certain rules and you will not be able to cope with those changes. So environmental risk is an investment risk. And I think a lot of investors are looking at environmental, and not only environment, social and governance as investment risk. BlackRock, which is the largest investment firm in the world, managing close to $10 trillion worth of assets. Their CEO 5-6 years ago, he basically said that if companies do not introduce ESG related things, we have to think of moving investments, because for us it is an investment risk. Now, in terms of Islamic banking and finance, we, as I said, from a Sharia point of view, we have to think, incorporate that as a requirement of Sharia, because that is a part of Sharia. And if you have to add value in Islamic finance, I think this is where it will come from. If you're doing things which conventional banks are doing business as usual, what is the uniqueness of Islamic finance, right? So there is an identity issue in Islamic finance, and one way Islamic finance can, in some ways, creates an identity is to become more ethical. Ethical meaning you'll worry about the impact of what you do. And I don't think, as I said, there will be innovation required to create that impact. Your question is very interesting. It's not only TikTok. I think a lot of, Libra was a digital currency which Facebook wanted to introduce, but the US government didn't allow it. But this is the new reality. And I think if we do not change to this new reality, I think businesses which do not change and adjust to this new reality, they will not exist in the future. And yesterday I mentioned the story of BlackBerry. Actually, they made a movie out of it. Once BlackBerry, because they had the keyboard on the phone, it was an innovation, and they had 45% of the market share of the mobile market. Because BlackBerry, you could use email along with phone. But because they did not innovate, Apple came in and they also had a keyboard on the screen. And the key difference was, because the keyboard of BlackBerry is on the phone, your screen is very small. But for Apple, you can use the whole screen. Once you're not using the keyboard, you can use the whole screen to read and things like that. And that small, it's not small in a technological sense, but that small change, basically, now BlackBerry has a market share of 0 when it comes to mobile. Now, Islamic banks, conventional banks, this is the new reality. For Islamic banks, it's even worse because you're competing with the conventional. And now you'll have a new sets of competitors. TikTok and the social media firms are there, but you have fintech companies which are coming in. So digital banks, they will operate in a very different way compared to how these conventional banks are operating. They will not have branches. They will communicate with people on their mobile devices. Something similar to Facebook and others, but the TikTok and them, what they have is already they have a client base. And that, I think, is a very big challenge. And this is a new reality. From a Sharia point of view, there's nothing wrong. Of course, there are ethical issues related to social media. There are ethical issues related to technology. These things have to be taken care of. Issues related to privacy and protection of data and things like that. But if financial institutions in general and also Islamic banks, they do not realize that this is the new reality, it will be very difficult for them to do business in the future.
Okay, I will try to answer. The first is how to build awareness of the Waqf in the village. I have three strategy. First is the internalization of the Waqf into formal curriculum. Internalization Waqf to curriculum of the formal education. And then the second is starting from the beginning. So let's say we make a program for the first grade or the second grade of the pupils, starting a Waqf 100 rupiah. And then last but not least is using the institution and the local wisdom. Actually, Waqf in terms of the terminology, it is new for them. But in terms of the local wisdom, which is, let's say, as tanah bengkok in Jawa, or tanah desa, or pusako tinggi, is actually a Waqf asset. So using the local wisdom and cultural to be an entry gate, as an entry gate to explain the Waqf practices. And then about the how to develop to assess the renewable project like a micro hydro, and also how to connecting the social and commercial financial. First is change the KPI. We cannot expect that the conventional bankers will behave differentially with the conventional one, as long as the KPIs is the same. But again, the problem is how to internalization and quantifying the maqasid Sharia into the formal practices of the banking. I think it is the challenge of the scholars, maybe in GM, accounting, how to quantifiable the maqasid, because there is the proverb that as long as they're not cannot be quantifiable, it cannot be done. So first is to change the KPI. So we have expect the different behavior of the Sharia bankers. The second is building an ecosystem. So the regulation and then also the guarantees scheme of that about the sustainable project has to be conducted. So I think it is now it is time for us to change the new paradigm of the Islamic finance. Maybe I just comment about the SDG. I make a joke to many college. SDG is just a new brochure, which is created by developed countries as a philanthropic program. Why I said that it is the new brochures, because everybody, every country, encouraged to conduct it, the some program against the poverty, so against the uneducational society, but they are not encouraged to kill the sources of that. What is the sources of those problems? First is the riba system, the interest-based system. The second is monopoly. The other is debt, international debt, political, currency war. They are not trying to kill the sources, but they are encouraged countries to solve the problem as an impact. So again, so this is, I think this is the new brochures of the philanthropy program that introduced by the developed country. So what is the essence? Back to the maqasid. Back to the maqasid Sharia. So this is our homeworks to quantifiable, to make it is implementable about the maqasid Sharia. I think this is my answer.
I think there's also a questions about the Waqf and microfinance. Is that it? Oh, it's fine. All right, thank you very much. I think I will summarize it a brief that in rural and urban areas, indeed there are several SDGs that are relevant. However, as an Islamic finance scholars, I think we should consider it more to be to the maqasid al-Sharia, and then we can look for the target and then the indicators, and then we can find which one is suitable and in line with the SDGs and maqasid al-Sharia. And about the Waqf in urban or rural area, from Mr. Imam Teguh, he said that we need internalizations, then start from the beginning, and I think start earlier is better. Then we can use local institutions and local wisdom, and how to develop the capacity of us as the scholars or practitioners. We can see the opportunity in doing green and how we can develop the technologies to facilitate this development, and then how we should identify the sustainability risks such as climate change risks and related to that. Also adding value to the Islamic banks, because we should differentiate between the Islamic banks and conventional banks. So we need to add value and then give difference between the Islamic banks and conventional banks. Of course, about the TikTok, I think what we can learn is how we should be adapt or we be agile with the development of technologies. And it also applies to Islamic banks, where we should more be client-based, and then we consider how the customers convenient with our services or Islamic banking services, and then they choose to have Islamic banks instead of conventional bankings. And I think we still have plenty of times to discuss, and I will open a second session of Q&A from this side.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name Purnadi. I'm from Jakarta Islamic State University. My first question for Professor Habib. Yeah. United Nations in 2015 announced about the concept blended finance. Yeah. Okay. Blended finance. My question is it is possible to enhance the blended finance to Islamic blended finance? And how about the changes? It's marginal or radical? Okay. And the second question for Pak Iman Teguh. CWLS or cash waqf link sukuk is implemented, it's already implemented. And how about the waqf link musyarakah or waqf link mudarobah? Is it can be implemented? How about the BWI, BW Indonesia? Is there any program to implement such as waqf link musyarakah or waqf link mudarobah? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Previously, could you repeat that? The first question to Prof. Habib is about the Islamic blended finance, and then Synergies. What is the other one? The first questions to Prof. Habib is about the Islamic blended finance, and yeah.
Can we improve the blended finance to Islamic blended finance, and how the changes? It is radical or marginal?
Oh, right. Thank you very much for the questions. And the second participants.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I am Dini Maulana Lestari from Sunan Kalijaga State University. So I would like to ask Professor Habib Ahmed opinion relating to the condition that I will deliver to you. So as far as I concern, research and conferences or other forums discussing relating to the Islamic finance or green finance already conducted. However, it is quite hard to implement it between the result or suggestion from this forum to the practical implementation in Indonesia specifically, because it's like both the result and the practical implementation sort of like their way, they're on their own way pattern, and sort of like confusing and couldn't integrating between one and each other. So I am, as a student, I actually confused to see or even analyze this condition. So I'd like to ask your opinion relating to this condition in Indonesia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the opportunities. My name is Bagaskara Sekita Wijaya and I am from International Relations Department. I have two questions. The first one for Prof. Habib Ahmad. It's about the halal and product management, yeah, related to the SDGs and Maqasid Syariah. Recently, I working on paper related to halal supply chain management, and we will discuss about the halal certifications, legal certifications. About the, we have to make sure that the product we consume is haram product free. So my question is, do we really need the legal certifications like from the MUI, or we just have to make sure that our product is harm free? And the next question is for the Dr. Imam. About the Grand Wakaf, Pak. So I have a recent research too about the Wakaf, and we are discussing about the Green Wakaf. So my question is, how far the Green Wakaf being implemented by the BWI, and how the BWI using the social media to attract the millennial or Gen Z to engage in wakaf in Indonesia. Thank you, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I think we can go to Pak Imam first to answer the question. Then about the wakaf link, Mudarobah.
Okay, the question is, how about the development, or how to develop wakaf? That, as I said, that as wakaf link sukuk, how about wakaf link musyarakah mudarabah or other scheme? Is basically we can do that, but again, the problem is about the iteration of the Nadir and institution who would support it. First is currently Badan Wakaf Indonesia and OJK has already designed a new product which could be launched by the Syariah Bank, is cash wakaf link deposit. So actually people is doing a cash wakaf, then invest into the deposit of the bank. So after that, bank could operate those wakaf fund. It depends on the scheme of the project which is feasible and profitable. So it might be put under akad of mudarabah or put under akad musyarakah. So it is only time to waiting. Yes, the product is already there that we have already designed, and currently is on the discussion with the regulators. After we are finished the scheme, the design, then we will introduce to the players, the Syariah bank. On the other hand, the new regulation, Undang-Undang Nomor 4, the fourth Undang-Undang Nomor 4 has make permission or bank Syariah allowed to be conducted as a nadir of cash wakaf. So actually, why the government promoting this? Because we are trying to reviving the wakaf institution, which is already has make a glory during Turki Utsmani, when the cash wakaf has been pillars of the economic even before the banking system implemented. So during the age of 14th to 15th century, there is more than 700 cash wakaf institution operated in Bursa within Turki Utsmani. So now we are trying to reviving those practice step by step, gradually. So currently government has already allowed and promote the Syariah bank to conduct as a nazir of cash wakaf. And then the second question is about the how far the green wakaf, the implementation in Indonesia. Still limited, but it is ongoing process. Currently, Badan Wakaf Indonesia has already recorded that there is one wakif giving a forest as a green wakaf asset in Bogor, West Java. And who is the wakif? Actually is the what is the scholars, the professor of the Bogor Agricultural Institute. They are giving a forest? Because they know about the role and the function, the importance of the forest itself. So I think about the green wakaf, it depends on the iteration, the wakif itself. So the instrument is there, the regulation is there, but again, the most hurdle or handicap is about the literation. Yes, currently green wakaf we just started with the forest one, but again about the micro hydro is something like that. As you mentioned before, I think the government has to be a sponsor, as a sponsor. We hope that by near terms we have already made a campaign with the UNDP, such as the protocol of green wakaf. So the such as the protocol means the basic regulation of the green wakaf that already launched early this year. So currently we are trying to campaign. If you want to, as you are a researcher, maybe I will give you the protocols that has been launched, joint program with UNDP and Badan Wakaf Indonesia for the green wakaf protocols, including on those papers about the micro hydro and the others. Thank you. Social media, yes, we have to admit that Badan Wakaf Indonesia is currently run by the seniors people. So we invite the young people to become a member. By the end of October, there is a selection program, the opening for Badan Wakaf Indonesia members council. But this is the problem. I have already stated, but again, this is the law. The problem is who could apply the member of Badan Wakaf Indonesia. The age is minimum of 40 years. So I have already, we have already give a memo to the Ministry of Religion that we have to change this, to amend this regulation that the member of Badan Wakaf Indonesia should be younger. So the range of the age is 40, the maximum 65. So it is open invitation as long as you are 40 up to 65, that by the end of this October, government opening the selection or recruitment of the anggota Badan Wakaf Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Imam, for the information. I think it's a good vacancy. But we can give it to Prof. Habib to answer the question.
Yeah, I think the first question was about blended finance. Actually, I mean, these are new concepts and there's nothing wrong to use these concepts. And in some ways, I think because when you look at Islamic finance, we talk about Islamic finance and Islamic social finance. Blended finance would be to basically integrate the commercial and the non-commercial Islamic finance to come up with new solutions and products. And I think in some cases, especially when you're trying to solve social problems, like financial inclusion, among others, blended finance probably is a better model. Again, coming back to the example of Indonesia, Baitul Mal wa Tamwil in principle is a blended finance structure. But I think the only problem, the Baitul Mal part is the social part, the charitable part, and Tamwil part is the commercial part. But I think the problem with Baitul Mal and Tamwil is they don't combine the two when they are making, for financing. I think in microfinance, one of the key problems is that when you target the very core poor, they divert a part of the financing for consumption purposes, and then it becomes difficult for them to repay the financing part because they have not invested enough. If you, for example, give the very poor financing and also support them with zakah money, which they do not have to repay back and they can use for consumption, for example, what you're doing is you're increasing their productive capacity to repay back the financing part. So this is an example where you can have blended finance in terms of combining both the commercial and non-commercial. And there can be other models too, actually, at least in academic literature, there have been a lot of discussions on how to blend, for example, Waqf and microfinance. For example, one of the key problems of financing micro and small enterprises is the credit risk. The Waqf can come and give guarantee, for example. You don't have to give financing, but guarantees which can increase financing. So I think different models can be used to come up with the blended finance. There are some models which already exist. Now, whether this is radical or marginal, if you are trying to replicate a model which already exists in conventional, of course, it will be marginal because you're just trying to replicate it. But if you come up with these innovative models where you are trying to create synergies between Islamic commercial finance and social finance, those new models can be actually radical, right? Yesterday I talked about an idea which is launched in Pakistan, the Akhwat microfinance. They're giving out Gadjah, interest-free loans, and it has been a very successful model. It's not a commercial model, but they are providing microfinancing. And this is a unique Islamic model, and I would say that is a radical innovation. And its growth rate has been almost, it defies all the things we learn in economics. How can a donation-based model expand so rapidly and create so much impact? Second question was related to, I think, the how you implement the ideas, right? The green ideas. I think one of the problem is the education system also. I think this applies not only to education but globally. Again, I did mention that, the university systems and the education systems are structured keeping in mind the industrial revolution area in the 17th, 18th century. They are mainly there to create workers, employees. It is the output of universities and even schools. We are creating them so that they can work in some industry or some factories, for example. But I think in a changing world, this probably is not enough. We do need employees and workers, but also we need people who can create ventures, create enterprises which can solve a lot of problems. But for that, we need a very different mindset. So the problem of translating a lot of these ideas into practical problems is we need to have the right skills of entrepreneurship, of how to think of innovation. And actually it is sometimes, as I said, we sometimes forget the softer side of things, but it is just the way we think can make a difference. And again, I'll just give you an example of Airbnb, as you know, is a new model. And the person who started it, he was unemployed, and he was living, because he was unemployed, he didn't have enough money. He asked his friend if he could share a room which he had. His friend had 2 rooms, bedroom. So he basically said, I can pay you, help you with some rent. And when he was there, this gave him an idea that there are so many people like his friend who have extra rooms. Why can't they just rent out the extra room and make some money? And that's where the business idea came, right? Now, the point I'm trying to make is there are probably thousands and millions of people who have shared rooms with other people, other families, friends, but they didn't have the entrepreneurial mind to think of a business model out of this very simple kind of thing. And I think this is the issue about the mindset, that if you have to come up with solutions, sometimes we have to think out of the box. Solutions sometimes are very simple, but because of our mindset, we cannot think of the solutions. And I think part of it also, the education system plays a part, that we train people not to think beyond certain things. And another example at the school, I don't know if this is true in Indonesia, probably it is. We don't ask students to ask questions. In fact, it's discouraged to ask questions, right? And that's why if you don't ask questions, this mindset becomes very stunted. We cannot think of new ideas. So I think it's not an easy thing, but anyway, moving forward, we really have to solve a lot of problems. We need to have new entrepreneurial kind of ventures. And by definition, entrepreneurship is about risk, but people are taking the risk, and some of them are successful, most of them are not. But that's how economies evolve, and I think we have to, in some ways, change the mindset so that we have more entrepreneurs in our societies rather than workers. The final thing was, I think, the final question was about halal supply chain and whether haram prevention was enough. To start with, it was enough, but not anymore. I think we really have to think of beyond. It's, you know, the other example you give is if you are, food may be halal, but if it's unhealthy, do we still promote it? From a tayyib point of view, probably not. It has to be wholesome, it has to be good. And I think we have to go beyond just the ritual of making a food halal and look at the supply chain, whether ethics is followed in supply chain. By the way, a lot of some Western institutions, fair trade, for example, it arose from the Christian belief. You know, Christians, they started this fair trade system where they're looking at the supply chain of different commodities which are imported in the West. So if you're importing coffee, you just don't go and drink the coffee. You want to see how it was sourced, whether the farmers were paid the right wages, whether the farming itself was done in an organic way. I think if, in terms of the value system, and given that we are considered a Khalifa on this earth, we really have to go beyond just looking at the halal and look at the whole process, and also what the impact it has. In terms of the halal in Islamic finance, we're just looking at the contract, whether it's halal or not, but we don't see the impact. I think impact is also very important, because again, if you look at some traditional fiqh, so if you're buying grapes to make wine, buying grapes itself from a legal point of view is permissible, halal, but if you're making wine out of it, then this halal transactions becomes invalid. So I think we have to see what is the impact and use of these contracts, whether it is harming the environment, whether it is not serving any social purpose, and make a decision which is more ethical.
Thank you very much, Prof. Habib. I think this is a very interesting discussions. However, time is being an issue, and we'd like to end this discussion session. Prof. Habib, could you please give a closing statement related to what we have discussed, and follow it by Imam.
Again, I want to thank you for inviting me here and exchanging ideas. Concluding remarks is, as I said, we live in a very uncertain, changing world, especially after COVID. I think we have a post-COVID world which is full of uncertainties and changing environments. So I think moving forward, not only Islamic finance, but in general, we really have to have a new mindset to be relevant in this changing world. And one of the key ways to do it is basically to think of innovation. And innovation can be, by the way, good innovation and bad innovation. That's why we have to bring in ethics in innovation, which can solve problems, very serious problems, which not only the humanity, but the planet faces. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Habib, and then followed by Pak Imam.
Okay. I think before closing, I just make a comment related with the blended and BMT, Prof. Ahmed. It is an ironic thing happen regarding financing practices in BMT. Actually, BMT administrator are worried about using the social fund because they are afraid of business risk. So the impact is the social activities is not developed, and then the using of the social funds is limited usage just only for darurat donation. Again, it is about the literacy and competencies. Jadi PMT catatan di BWI itu dana wakafnya nganggur karena administratornya takut menggunakan. Because it is the narrow translation about the wakaf, that wakaf cannot be lost, cannot be reduced. So again, the wakaf is not improved. So as a closing, I think after the COVID, after the dynamic situation, what we have already done, I think it is time for us to change the paradigm. I agree with the Prof. Ahmed. So we shifting the focus from the form and administration to be more substance. So I think this the momentum that the finance Islamic finance would be reviving again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please give a round of applause to both of our speakers that has given very insightful discussions and presentations. Once again, we'd like to thank all of the speakers. Thank you very much for coming to UGM. And of course, all of the participants, I think we have gained a lot of insights, practice and experience about the Islamic finance, Waqf, and sustainability. And Alhamdulillah, today is Friday, and I think we have been very productive. And I hope that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala will give us the more knowledge about this kind of issues. And Alhamdulillah as well for all of the participants. Thank you for coming, and we are very happy to have you here because unfortunately time is an issue and we have Friday prayer today. So I would like to end these discussions, and if there is any mistake from me, I very apologize, and then I hope to see you again in other discussions or other opportunity. Thank you, and I will give it back to the Master of Ceremony. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.